Hi, I'm Dan Dooley, CEO of Morris Anderson, a turnaround and financial advisory firm based here in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a past president of the Chicago chapter and have been a board member and a vice president of global TMA as well. My firm, Morris Anderson, has been an active participant, sponsor of TMA locally and internationally for probably the last 15 years of approximately how long I've been a member of TMA. The topic I want to discuss is selling a distressed business, and we're going to break it up into three distinct segments. The first segment is going to talk about why the uniqueness of a distressed business. That'll then be followed up with some of the common mistakes that buyers of distressed businesses make, and we'll finally end with what I'll call key takeaways for sellers of distressed business. So starting with the concept of a distressed business and why they're unique, there's probably approximately 11 factors in my judgment that make selling a distressed business different than selling a conventional business. First off, in distressed business, usually sellers or stakeholders in the business are kind of upset, angry, distressed. People are very worried about losing money. So there's an emotional aspect and a stressed aspect that you normally don't see in a traditional M&A transaction. Secondarily, the passage of time often erodes the value of a distressed business. For example, if a business is losing money or consuming value, the passage of time is not your friend at that point in time. Third, the amount of time allocated to sell a distressed business by those stakeholders, normally secured lenders, perhaps even the owner, because it is often very compressed. Typically, you get maybe 3 months to sell a distressed business, where a traditional M&A transaction is more measured in the 6 months or 9 months or even a year timeline. Oftentimes, the owners in distressed business aren't going to be the only person who control the sale. Oftentimes, these sales are heavily influenced by the secured lender's desire to not lose money or to avoid loss. So they expedite the process and push the process along. And although they don't control the process, they influence it very heavily. So the owner is not the only decision maker. Fifth, owners typically have very little equity in these situations. Oftentimes, at least in family-owned businesses or privately owned businesses, these businesses are sold essentially for the benefit of the creditors, not often only the secured lender, sometimes the unsecured as well. But the owners typically have very little economic stake, and oftentimes they're trading the cooperation for their guarantee, release from their guarantee, or potentially just for the relationship with the secured lender. Oftentimes also the unsecured creditors or trade creditors, they are also not going to receive any significant benefit as well. The other things that are interesting or different about distressed businesses is most businesses are valued based upon a multiple of earnings, some factor applied to the historical earnings base of a company. Many distressed businesses don't have earnings, or if the earnings they have may be de minimis or very low. So multiplying against a negative number or a number near zero often produces a value that's meaningless or doesn't make any sense at all. So what you find in distressed situations is what I call orderly liquidation value actually becomes, in a way, a bidder for a distressed business, meaning that an alternative on the table for all the parties, the owner, the secured lender, etc., is actually the liquidation of the business, and that's kind of the floor, but that's kind of a subjective and not an easy thing to have agreement on, if you will. The last two things are knowledge of bankruptcy and insolvency is incredibly important, even if bankruptcy is not going to be used as the vehicle to sell the business, because one has to understand the leverage and the potential of selling the business in some sort of insolvency transaction, bankruptcy, assignment for benefit of the creditors, receivership, etc., that may be outside the ordinary course. And lastly, bankruptcy is a very, very popular way to convey title to a distressed business, primarily because of Section 363 in the Bankruptcy Code, which allow businesses to be sold free and clear of all liens and encumbrances, which is a very powerful and strong way to sell an asset. That concludes our first segment where we talked about some of the unique aspects of selling a distressed business. Stay tuned for our second segment on common mistakes that buyers make when trying to buy a distressed business.